Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good to have you all back. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you all. Hi, Glenn. How are you? You're going to like this one, I think. You're going to have fun today. Yeah, we'll learn some interesting things today. Good to see everyone coming back and joining us. Happy Mother's Day to you mothers out there, both in the Zoom call and out on Facebook and whatnot. Make sure to call your mother today, take her out to dinner, give her some flowers, pay a little extra special attention. I just learned today that actually I didn't look up all the details, but my wife said she saw some type of article or notification or something that the least favorite phrase of mothers these days is a mother's the hardest job in the world. I'm not exactly sure why. There's a lot of complication, probably political and social things involved in that, but tiptoe around that phrase, I guess. I don't know. Well, we can all acknowledge that our mothers did a lot of work to bring us into the world and make our lives worth living. So, yeah, it looks like we've had a chance to get folks to join the call here. As people stream in here, I'll continue to let them in. But let's lay the foundation for the program today. So welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And I'm going to add a few links to the chat, both here on Zoom and out on the socials, Facebook and YouTube, for the benefit of everyone. And then I'll walk through those links momentarily. And let me make some final edits just to make sure that they're formatted appropriately. I know we had some feedback previously that some of the links didn't work. So I think we're going to be good, and you all can let me know if there's any issues. All right, so let's put this out on the socials. Looking pretty good there. And let's get this all into Zoom. Yeah, I think they're going to work. If anybody has any issues with the links or something, let me know now, and then I could clean it up. But I'll walk you through what we shared. So, basically, there's a lot going on. I want to make sure everybody's apprised of the opportunities. So Chris Brown is about to do a masterclass with us on Thursday of this week. And from now forward, we are doing third Thursday of the month. Every third Thursday, we're doing a masterclass. So if you're a subscribing member of Piano Technicians Masterclasses, at the craftsman level, at a minimum, you should be able to attend these programs and gain access to the archive. And Chris Brown, we had him as a guest recently, and he's going to come for the masterclass and talk about regulation. Of course, his claim to fame is this regulation station, which has received acclaim from some of the best folks in the industry, including Mario Egrech and Steve Brady, and the list of accolades goes on and on. So I put a link in there if you want to sign up for that masterclass or begin to subscribe so you can join it. The link is there. And then also we've had some recent masterclasses you may be interested in, a French polish class by Doug Gregg. So to sign up for that, the link's there. We had a really cool masterclass with David Clavins, sort of the iconoclast piano designer. And you can sign up to check that recording out as well. And then, of course, I put a feedback link for you folks. It's always good to get your feedback on the program, what we can do to improve, or just kind of what you like and what's working. And there's a podcast, of course, that we have. You can find it at pianotechradio.com/subscribe. Our subscriber numbers have been steadily rising. We've reached the level of top 100 performing arts podcasts in the US on Apple. So it's all going very well, very exciting, and there's a lot of momentum there. And there you can catch only the audio, of course, of previous episodes. We're going back in the archives about 2 years, and it's fun to also reminisce. And also we get to hear our beloved David Anderson once again, sort of dispelling his wisdom to everyone. And I had a message here. I think it was from someone on the call actually right now that one of our most recent episodes was their favorite. And let me see if I can find what that was all about. Favorite episode was the one on letting your intuition tune the piano. And of course, that was featuring David Anderson, talking about that wonderful technique he has of kind of letting go and letting the work sort of do itself. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can hear that episode. And of course, if you want to sign up for Piano Tech Radio Hour, it's just $16 a month. And you always get access to these programs live and the recordings. It's bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And without further ado, let me sort of step into today's presentation. And what we're going to do here, it's going to be divided up into a little bit of a formal presentation and then a bit of a slideshow based on several photos that I took on a recent journey, which you'll hear more about. So let me make sure that this presentation is in the right mode. And let's see here. To full screen. Yeah, that looks good. All right. So I'll share my screen and we'll get started. And then, of course, we can chat and have questions along the way. I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to take me to run through all this, but it's kind of a fun story. I'll share as many details as I can. And then I'm pretty sure there'll be kind of like a continuation of this saga in the near future. And I'll explain why that is. So let's do a screen share here. And we'll get screen number 2 visible. If anybody has any issues viewing or hearing, there's only a couple sound-based clips here, but if you can't hear on some of the videos, just let me know. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Lyon and Healy. So Lyon and Healy is a company that's been around for quite a while at this point in terms of the American legacy of the music industry and so on and so forth. So the company was founded in 1864. And I recently visited. This background here is one of the photos I took. I was there literally just yesterday. So it's very fresh in my mind, the trip. Just a little bit overview of what I want to cover today. A bit of the backstory on kind of my attempts to connect with Lyon and Healy. And I'm happy to report that after having visited yesterday, I've got quite a bit farther than I had in the past. We'll talk a little bit about Lyon and Healy history. I'm not an expert in history in general or Lyon and Healy history specifically, but I'll kind of share a bit of what I learned from my research, what the folks there that I met at Lyon and Healy shared with me, and so on and so forth. So that'll be kind of fun. Let me make sure that the appropriate windows open here. And so I'll get into that. And then we'll also get into kind of some of the main features of what I found when I visited the basically it's a factory and headquarters of Lyon and Healy. Some really cool ornate carvings on some instruments that are basically held mainly just for their historical merit, are kind of such artifacts that they're not quite playable, whether it's because they didn't tell me whether it's because they want to protect the instruments or they just literally wouldn't function. But some really cool ornate carvings that they have there, some really cool hand-painted artwork which an example of you see here on the left. That's one of the photos I took. And we'll talk a little bit, I'll go through some photos just of kind of what it's like inside, showing you the harps and talking about my visit. And then if we've got time, I'll tell you kind of what's next on the agenda, next steps. I think there's some fun stuff on the horizons. So yeah, let's get into the backstory here. So Lyon Healy harps, they have been on my radar as a potential radio hour topic nearly since the beginning of Radio Hour. I live here in Chicago, and I've noticed the name Lyon Healy quite a bit. And somewhere along the line, it just popped into my head. Oh wow! Like I wonder if Lyon Healy still exists. I wonder if there's a factory. I wonder what exactly is going on with the brand. And of course, it turns out they're still in operations, but primarily, I'm speaking as if we all know. I'm not sure if this is just a Midwest thing or whatever, but Lyon Healy was quite a manufacturer and distributor of pianos back in the day. And at this point, they sort of have dropped out of piano industry for the most part and have focused on their harp and string instrument production. So here you can see the Lyon Healy headquarters in Chicago. It, as I mentioned, exudes an air of mystery, hidden away from the hustle and bustle of the city's more obvious locations, yet still a part of the fabric of the city itself. And, for those of you that may or may not know a little bit of Chicago, this is kind of the downtown area. And I actually went to high school kind of around this area in sort of the West Loop, Southwest Loop area near University of Chicago. And then Lyon Healy, this area is it has historically been a little bit of an industrial district, which makes a lot of sense considering they're doing piano manufacturing workshops, warehouse space and so on. However, that area, in addition, it wasn't always the greatest and safest area, as sometimes happens in industrial areas. But as of late, it's really been, picking up, and there's been a lot of, development and younger people moving into the area. It's kind of an up and coming space. So it's an interesting location, and it makes sense that I've sort of stumbled upon it more as I had. So if we look back into the past couple of years, my research had really comprised primarily of, checking out the website. Of course, they have a really great website with really beautiful images of harps and a really excellent story of the history and the culture behind Lyon Healy. And at the same time, this isn't a thing where, there's at least from my knowledge, it's not like one of those other icons of Chicago, like Uno's Pizza or, Maggiano's or, the Sears Tower or the Art Institute. It's not really something where if you're just walking down the street, it's not like a tourist destination. It's not like a storefront. It's at least for my case, I hadn't seen much of Lyon Healy aside from tuning some pianos in the area with the Lyon Healy name on it. And so to access them was a little bit obscure. And so, this is kind of how I learned about what was going on. These are some snapshots from the website. You can see a little bit about the founders, Lyon Healy, and some really beautiful images of what's going on. You can see they have some really fine craftsmanship going on. You can see they have a beautiful workshop as well in the space. A bit of a presentation and performance space, which I'll also show some photos of during this presentation. But basically, my first line of attack for reaching out, being kind of busy and not having, this is kind of the simplest thing to do, is just to make a phone call. And, I've tried that with several avenues. People ask me to book various folks on the show, and sometimes it's not as obvious how difficult it can be. So, trying to build a relationship from scratch via phones, kind of like performing a waltz with a broomstick. It's awkward, it's challenging, it's not very graceful. And, what you end up doing is either leaving messages, with someone who you're not even sure when they're supposed to be in the office or whatever you're calling. They're of course mainly selling harps. And their biggest concern is if I call up and say I want to buy a harp, they're going to attend to me quite lovingly. But if I'm just kind of like, hey, I'm this guy, I've got a radio program. It's hard to explain what it is. I'd love to connect with you and feature you. it's not so obvious what's going on, and it's hard to make that connection. But what I noticed happened here was when I was making those phone calls and checking out the website, I wasn't really even clear on the location of the Lyon and Healy headquarters. Even if I had looked at it on a map, I could see that general location there. But to put two and two together exactly where it is, I hadn't usually passed by that area. But as of late, I've actually been driving into the West Loop of Chicago. And as I mentioned, it's a developing area. So there's actually a lot of fun stuff to do. And so I'll go down into the West Loop area and, work remotely from a coffee shop or something like that. And there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's kind of fun to go that way. And oftentimes I'll take a street that's called Ogden Avenue. It's a diagonal street, and you kind of get off the expressway. You got to go down Ogden Avenue, and it takes you towards the West Loop area. And lo and behold, one day I happen to be driving by, and I look right there and say, "Hey, that's Lyon and Healy. That's the Lyon and Healy I've been trying to connect with and see what's going on." But as you can see, we have bricked out windows. We've got a pretty closed off looking facade here. It's not really a showroom. And you'll see, when you walk in the front door, or actually I'll show you in a minute, even when you walk in the front door, it doesn't have that kind of storefront vibe. And so recently I've had a slight bit more free time than I had in the past. I actually went up and looked at their hours of operation, which is actually quite low, right? I think it was something like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Monday through Friday. And I didn't even realize it till I got there, by appointment only. So it's a pretty clandestine building there, and to know what's going on inside. And I decided to actually take a trip there, show up, and see what I could gather. And so that the next video here you'll see is kind of just my arrival on the scene here and what you see when you first approach. And then I'll kind of get into, of course, what I learned in a little bit more of a slideshow of sorts. Nice gray rainy day upon arrival. And there's this really wonderful factory, workshop, showroom space. And we'll get to take a look inside. So this is kind of like the front entryway, right? Again, it's kind of like, I didn't even see until I got to the front door, it said by appointment only. And I kind of, I showed up, I said, "Hey, I don't have an appointment, but maybe we can connect. Here's what I'm trying to do." And luckily people had a little bit of time and were able to get me into the facility and show me around a little bit. And we got started looking things through. All right. So at this point, let me switch over to my actual photos on record here, and we'll skip through those, and you can kind of get a look at what I saw once I got into Lyon and Healy here. So this is actually in that same front room that we just saw. There's some really interesting photos of the various folks involved at the company. This is probably going to be, if we make that out, that is Patrick Healy himself, with a wonderful bushy mustache. And then, of course, some more recent important people involved in the company. And I actually have to continue to do more research about the harps. This is sort of a smaller type of harp on a stand, which is a little bit different than kind of like the harp that Glenn showed us and that he had built, and which is mostly what you see around the Lyon and Healy factory and showroom area. This harp they had in a case right there in the entryway, kind of an interesting story there. So this particular harp is the 9th actual harp built by Lyon and Healy, number 509. Looks like they started at 500 to make it look like, make it look like they had been building for a while. I don't know how that works, but 509, style 21 concert grand harp built circa 1890, and then revised 1894. And there's a catalog. I think I got a photo of a catalog open to a testimonial from the owner, Miss Lee Timmons. Let's see if we got that. Yes, there it is. And if you look, it says, "Dear sirs, I cannot sufficiently thank you for your improvements in the harp. The uncertainty and difficulty attending regulation and even the best of the old style harps was a serious drawback to perfect success in concert work. And besides this, many small but important parts of the instrument were fruitful sources of annoyance. In the Lyon and Healy harp, I was delighted to find an instrument from a mechanical standpoint left nothing to be desired, and yet in tone exceeded in volume and brilliancy anything that I had ever heard. Yours very truly, Lee Timmons, harpist." And we'll find out later, and also as I kind of summarized in the email I sent out, Lyon and Healy is if you want to go out and find harps, they're pretty much dominating the market, especially since they merged with another big harp manufacturer out of Italy several years ago. And so, of course, it's a bit hyperbolic, as many testimonials are. But that having been said, Lyon and Healy seems to be really been creating incredible instruments basically for centuries. Just to give away a little bit of what we'll go into, they did not start out making harps, which is very interesting. There's that testimonial. Here's a look at the pedals on that particular harp. Quite a few. I think there's like 6 or 7. There's 7 different pedals on there. And I have to admit, I have yet to fully understand, how all of those pedals work. I'm sure Glenn could tell us a little bit about that. But we do know that they kind of allow the pitch of certain strings to change so that you can play in different keys and so on and so forth. So I'm going to guess if there's 7, where you're trying to hit maybe the 8 different tones of the major scale or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll consult. Maybe we'll consult a little bit with Glenn before we wrap up. And then, of course, incredible to see the ornate carving that's been going on for years within the world of harps. It appears to be a bit of a tradition there that's continued to this day. Some of the Italian harps you'll see in the photos that I share actually have a little bit less carving, but it's still kind of like a cool, clean design that they have. And yeah, as you can see, they were working with the tools that they had. And of course, this stuff is quite old as well. And so there's a bit of wear and tear on this stuff. Another photo of the carvings, a little bit of a look at the full design of the harp. Of course, you've got the gold leaf here, which even in itself has been worn away a little bit, but still a very beautiful instrument. And you can see the sort of engraving on here and a little bit of the detail work. I'm not exactly sure. We can find out. This looks like maybe even some sort of inlay. I found out that originally you'd had hand painting on these instruments, and in recent years they're using decals, of course. And so it's very interesting when you can come across something hand painted or something original or something that takes a little bit more custom craftsmanship. So here's a good look. So just to follow along the story here, I entered the location, and we, I'm just actually seeing we have a little bit of a few more slides in my slideshow that I think became hidden. So let me go back to that, see if I can pull the slideshow up. One moment here. Bear with me one moment. And because I have a few other slides that for some reason disappeared. And we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about the history before I go into just the straight up slideshow. So where's this? Let's unhide a couple of these slides. Yes, there we go. From here, maybe. Yeah, let's just share the couple of slides, which I think are going to be interesting. hide 2 pages, present, and we'll go to presenter view, present, enter full screen. We'll go back one. Yeah, we might as well take a look at that. Okay, so a little bit on the Lyon and Healy history. Of course, Lyon and Healy was founded in 1864, as mentioned previously, by 2 young Bostonians named George W. Lyon and Patrick J. Healy. And it just so happened they were dispatched by a Boston music publisher, Oliver Ditson, to start a sheet music shop in Chicago. And of course, one thing led to another, and it turned into its own operation, exploring all sorts of facets of music. One of the key moments in the history was in the early 1880s when Patrick Healy developed a new merchandising tool, which kind of, it sounds like the latest in technology of the time, and probably long past seeming relevant to us, an illustrated catalog that actually went against the secret price and sales from samples tradition of that era. So you can see this. I found this online here from a library catalog of photos, and you can see they're sort of describing the harp and listing the price, and of course it looks like it's been changed in this particular catalog, but they were actually being a little bit bold in going out there and sharing what their offerings. And of course at this time those type of offerings were not just harps. The Lyon and Healy got into the piano industry, and but as well they got into the industry of other string instruments and brass and woodwind instruments, and grew quite large in terms of the scope of what they covered in terms of instruments. Let's go a little bit back to the photos. So as I talked there, there was a couple people that had appointments, and then they found someone who wasn't super busy to come and spend a little bit of time with me. See a little note in the chat. Let's see what this says. It's probably from Glenn. Yes. So the left 3 pedals from center out is B, C, and D, and the right 4 pedals from the center out is E, F, G, A. Top notch is the flat position from the bridge pins, and the center notch is the natural position, C major scale pitch, and the bottom notch is the sharp position. Harp is default tuned to the C flat, aka B major, and the center row of discs is C major. The bottom row of discs is C sharp major, due to shortening the string lengths by a semitone each time the pedal is progressively moved down the notches. Fascinating. And so then this particular harp, I'm guessing here we have the pedal. Look, Glenn, you could come in anytime you want, but it looks like these mechanisms here are really going to be the ones that come in and grab the string and change the pitch depending on the position of the pedals. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, basically you've got the tuning pins on the top with the string wrapped around, and then you have the bridge pins underneath that. That's the longest length, and that would be the B major pitch that you hear, or C flat major. As you operate, let's say, a B pedal, so go to the red string just to the right, and go 1 back. That would be a B. Okay, so that's B. So when you operate a B pedal on the left side, the first one, and you take it to the center notch, then the 4th disc just below where you're marking in the center would rotate and
this one?
And it would grip the string and shorten the string length by exactly a semitone there. So now that pitch would give you the equivalent of B sharp, which would sound like a C, because by default it's a B flat string.
Right.
So now it's a C pitch, and if you go operate the pedal and take it to the bottom notch, then it would operate that and grab it from there, and now it becomes a B double sharp.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you got to see is the center row is actually going to be your C major scale, and all the pedals are going to be in the center notch position, not the up, not bottom, but in the center. And so that's what permits you, if they're all engaged all the way through, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, then you are starting from a C major scale. So if you want to play in a key of F, which need to be flat, then you go to the B pedal and you would notch it to the top to allow it to go to the B flat from the bridge pin. But if you wanted to play in a key of G, then all the pedals are in the middle. Then you go to the F pedal, which would be the second right one from center, and the blue or the black string here is the F. Then it would operate the bottomed disc, and it would make it an F sharp. So now you just simply play it, because the spacing of the string is still in an octave, 7 strings. So you can play in any key just by matching where your color coordination is. So if you want to play in key of G, then you're going to start with a string just above the black one, and that's your starting note. And that's how that works. So all of them, that what allows the pedal harp to be compatible with the full orchestra that is required to play in any key.
Okay. And so basically, when you press down any given pedal, it's going to selectively turn some of these, but not all of them, unless you're in the key of C, in which it will turn every single one.
So if you're starting in a standard and you have a key signature flat, then you go to the pedal that correspond to the notes that should be flat, and you notch them to the top, and then you would default the flat position on the bridge pin. If you have a key that has sharps, then you would go to the bottom notch with the required setting. See there we go. So from the left, as you can see, those 3 pedals would be from the center out B, C, and D. So you're looking at a D pedal there. That's C in the middle, that's a B pedal there. Then the other side would be E, F, G, A as it goes out. So if you need sharps, you put them in the bottom notch. If you need flat, you keep it in the top notch. If you need natural, then all the pedals are default left in the middle notch. And that's how you go up and down. So,
got it.
Okay, so that's basically how it works. So you're able to chromatically play in any key, because the top is flat, the very bottom is sharp, and the center are your natural.
Yeah. And so basically this is the first notch. If I press it down to here, and if I take it down a little bit further, that's going to take it so that second one is that's
right. You're just going through that zigzag lightning bolt, and you just notch it as you go.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I meant to talk about this later in the program, but I had a discussion with a fellow who's been working for Lyon & Healy for several years. He actually started out as a Mitsubishi salesperson and rose through the ranks at that organization. And then he moved on over to Lyon & Healy, working in the guitar department. And I think he's kind of like the general sales manager, basically. He's in charge of all the sales. And so, what he shared with me, which is really interesting, is that there, just like we have a guild of piano technicians, there is a guild of harp technicians. Let me get this up here. Lyon & Healy. Let's get this up. And so, actually, let me see here. Services, professional, Lyon & Healy. Let me just look it up directly, but it's on their site. Lyon & Healy Guild, Technicians Guild of Lyon & Healy. So they have this. There it is, harptechguild.com. Kind of feels a little bit familiar, right? As is piano technicians. And, it's interesting because there's, as I talked with this fellow that worked at Lyon & Healy, he was saying they have a lack in skilled harp technicians, and he's been trying to think about, what they should do about that and how they can get people in the door to be working on harps. And so, he was thinking, oh yeah, it might be interesting to reach out to piano technicians because there's a bit of overlap. And of course, as Glenn probably understands, there's there's enough overlap that it's interesting to him and he can understand what's going on. So if I look here, maybe if I look in the US and Midwest, they've kind of got a listing of various technicians. It's very reminiscent of what we're up to, right? And then they'll be able to perform various services similar to what we might do. We do some regulation on the instrument, regulate the levers, restring the instrument, change some bass wires. So I don't know if you agree with me, Glenn, but it seems like, there could be some room for experts in piano tuning and regulation to put a little bit of time and energy into the study of the harps and how it works, and maybe have a little second line of expertise, revenue, income, and whatnot. So interesting stuff. Let's move forward on the presentation a little bit. I'll mix in a little bit of the history here. So we got a little bit into this historical instrument, but I got to sit down and talk with this fellow who I mentioned, who was basically a sales manager at Lyon & Healy. And, he gave me an overview of kind of the history of Lyon & Healy, relatively informal. But, what's interesting is the company at one point was actually acquired by CBS, the broadcasting company. There's a phase in which I think it was in like the 60s or 70s that they acquired the company. Of course, there was also a relatively significant relationship with Steinway, actually, at one point, where Lyon & Healy was selling and distributing Steinway pianos. Of course, basically the bent of what Lyon & Healy was doing back in the day was kind of being like the Sears catalog of musical instruments, right? So you could see they started with sheet music. They moved into pianos and harps, and then they moved on to even other instruments and expanded quite a bit. And the pianos, they're not exactly on the level of the Steinways, Mason and Hamlins, Canabis, and so forth of the American piano history. But, you could think about Lyon & Healy as kind of, the common man's, fine piano. You want a good, solid piano for your home. Lyon & Healy is one of those places that could produce it with a respected brand and expertise in the industry. So this is the sort of the main showroom of the harps that they have here. There's a little bit of a slight bit of video here. I don't want to share too much because I know we might work with Lyon & Healy and have them kind of show us a little bit officially on video, but you can get a sense it's a very lovely environment. A lot of beautiful music gets made here, and quite a few really interesting models. Now, what I heard from the folks that I spoke with, the price points of a harp, interestingly enough, are relatively similar to that of a piano. There's some harps that are going to run on the order of a couple $1,000s and all the way up to $80,000 or over $100,000. Pianos are probably going to run a bit higher in general, but in terms of order of magnitude, we're talking about a similar range and a similar level of craftsmanship within the harp industry. So here's a really beautiful instrument. Of course, there's a lot of opportunity to exhibit some beauty and artwork and within these instruments beyond just their musical quality. And this particular harp is a Salvi, which of course, I'm not a harp guy, but I'm learning about them. So Salvi is an Italian company, and I heard actually various stories of exactly what the relationship between Salvi and Lyon & Healy is. But what I do know is that Salvi is more of an Italian harp maker, and of course, Lyon & Healy is more of an American harp maker. And the two companies, whether one owns the other or not, clearly they have a very connected relationship. One person said one doesn't own the other. They just sort of have a sister company relationship where they can sort of sell and market each other's instruments, maybe on some sort of commission basis, all the way to somebody, I've read in certain places and people have told me that, Salvi acquired Lyon and Healy, or Lyon and Healy acquired Salvi, or there's a deep relationship between these two harp companies. And what I did here was, because of this relationship and the merger of those two brands, between the two of them, they basically cover 90% of the harp market. And that is, I believe, globally, because you do have the Italian brand and the American brand. Again, if Glenn maybe have heard something different, but that's the information I got, that if you want, your basic, general brand with a name in the harp industry with lots of instruments, that's going to be Salvi, Lyon, and Healy. And then, of course, from the limited research I did, of course, there's plenty of sort of smaller makers of harps and probably individual craftsmen that can build a custom harp. But on the level of having a larger organization and manufacturing, larger manufacturing capability, this is who you're going to look to. Jean Barrett put a comment in here, said she loves the Salvi Ariana harp shown there. She has one. It's beautiful. Oh, that's very cool. We'll have to take a look at that sometime. And so that looks like it's a little bit further out image of the similar harp. Here's another really beautiful harp on display here. Now, again, it's very beautiful. And it's very ornate, and you have these wonderful carvings and these wonderful artworks on the instrument. My understanding, although it may change depending on the exact instrument that we're looking at, is that these decals this artwork at this point is likely to be mostly actually decals, and so somebody painted something beautiful at one point, and then they're going to be able to reuse it. Or it could be the case that it's just that the sort of artwork is constructed in a a third party surface or sort of artwork manner of creating the artwork, and then it's created as a decal to put on the instrument. I'm not sure how much they reuse these designs or not. There's clearly some patterns as to what's going on. Now, the carving, my sense is that it's actually actual carving of these parts, which I think is pretty impressive. And there probably could be a case. I'm sure there's some harps in the world where you're going to have some sort of molded designs and things like that. But I'm pretty sure that they continue to do some ornate carving, especially if you look on the website, you can see, craftsmen, the hands of craftsmen carving actual instruments. So you get to see a little bit of the variety and variation in the instruments available. Really beautiful stuff to look at. Here's another kind of overview of that particular instrument, so you can get a look at it from different angles and check it out. They're just fun to kind of ring out a chord on. It really made me want to have a harp, I'll have to say. Here's some kind of cool memorabilia on the walls, some sort of famous musicians adding their accolades and their signatures to the imagery there. This says this is the World's Columbian Exposition, 1893, Chicago, Lyon and Healy Pavilion. Wow. The carving and the detail on the building itself looks just as ornate as the carving on one of these harps. Pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if you could make this out, but so this is basically would be a larger warehouse type structure building, and they built this pavilion inside of it. Man, that would have been cool to be there. And what if you could go back in time and check that out? That would be really cool. 1893. Lyon and Healy, another another sort of famous harpist as well, Sarah Bolen. By the way, I highly recommend a series on, I forget where it is. I think it might have been created by the History Channel or something. It's called The Men Who Built America. And it follows along all these kind of intense personalities that sort of built everything going on in America over the last several centuries. And so you're talking about, Vanderbilt and Carnegie and Chase and all these Frick and all these really fascinating characters. And Carnegie actually apparently built Carnegie Hall, at least according to this documentary, almost as a sort of a shift in his sort of personal mission. There had been some controversial things that his company had been involved in, involving workers and local townspeople, where there was some kind of conflict of the rich and the poor and whatnot. And having built Carnegie Hall as sort of a way to contribute something beautiful with his wealth to society. And so I'll have to look more into that story, but if you watch that documentary, you'll learn about that along the way. So this is one of the Salvi harps. And this is, of course, much smaller than those other ones. I'm wondering, I have to find out the price points. Maybe I can afford something like this, get it in my house, let my little one have a chance at playing harp music. Here's a brief video showing that instrument. There's a Google Photos. I think in the quality there, it ultimately is probably slightly better than what we're seeing, but it's all better than last week. Last week, I apologize, we had a little bit of internet issues. All right. Another very beautiful instrument. And you can see the various eras and styles of historical American art that are coming in here. I see a lot of kind of Art Deco and sort of mid-century influence in this particular instrument. And you'll see, I'll probably have to get through this a little bit more quickly. But this particular decal design and this particular construction, I'll show you in some later photos. Like this is kind of seems to be like a reproduction of a patterning that is from previously like hand painted, right? I'm guessing this is a decal, but we can look back at some other hand painted versions of the same artwork, which is pretty fun to kind of see the evolution of the instruments. So at this point, again, we're looking at, as to my knowledge, pretty much mostly modern instruments that you might acquire today that aren't that old and probably on the order of years or maybe at most decades. But I'll get into right here actually. So they brought me into a room, which is the room, if you might have noticed some earlier photos featuring our stage with several harps on it. They have maybe a performance area. And in that area, they also store some of these historical instruments. And half of them are kind of probably most interesting because they're older, unusable due to their functionality or sort of just not wanting to disturb them. And then having some very cool carvings on them. And then another half of them, they didn't tell me they were unusable. So I'm guessing they probably were usable. And then on top of that, though, they were hand painted. So they're sort of interesting to have them on display and be able to look at the painting. Now here in a glass case, they showed some of the really incredible hand painted works behind glass, but some more they don't have behind glass, at least to my knowledge, according to having spoken with the folks there. But yeah, wow, it's almost three-dimensional. It's got that sort of Trump delay kind of a feel to it, and you can really appreciate the fine detail here. I see another message from Jeannie in the chat. Music Makers is a great company, and she said she's built a few of their Reverie harps from their kits. Cool. So here's this row of harps that feature custom painting on the soundboard area. There's another look at this room. Of course, I think it looks pretty great. They were like, oh, we're not ready for guests, right? So I'm sure they probably switch it around and organize a little bit more when they have sort of performances and visitors and whatnot. But it's still a really beautiful gallery area where you can view these harps and check out a performance. Here's that stage area. And out that window right there, you can see the Chicago skyline, the Sears Tower, sort of from this somewhat distant, but also somewhat close vantage point. And so on this stage, of course, I'm guessing these are just some of the pinnacle of what's available here. Got a chance to kind of go through these particular instruments. These would likely not be antiques, but very maybe the latest of the latest and greatest of what you can find in the harp world. Really beautiful stuff. And if we probably doesn't even fully do it justice, the kind of the shimmer and shine of those gilded areas of the instrument there. And you can see this one, I felt like it had a little tattoo. Just that little piece of art there on the edge of it. Incredible burled wood on this particular instrument. Beautiful craftsmanship. Really beautiful engraving work. And pretty soon I'll be getting, I think I have a few more photos on the carvings and the artwork. So I'll kind of zip through these, but you can kind of appreciate the sort of beauty and craftsmanship. So this is another look at the row of, I believe those are the more vintage instruments. These ones, no, these ones are the ones that have hand painting on them, I believe. Let me just double check here. Yeah. So you can get a sense at looking at these particular harps and looking at the hand painted designs and how beautiful they are. Here is some of the carvings. And so this particularly was an interesting one. It featured, what is that? Maybe 4 or 5 different composers here at the top of the harp. And so you'll see we've got Wagner. We've got Spohr. Spohr is a composer I'm actually not as familiar with, but it's interesting to kind of go on a little bit tangent and look up his music. Bach, and then this is Beethoven, of course, and Mozart. And again, this is hand carved, and actually, if you see, you'll see that there's multiple, even though this is hand carved, there's multiple of like a similar design that gets recreated on multiple of these instruments. There's another Wagner feature. I think I got back to look at those carvings on some of the later photos. This is back to the showroom of modern instruments. Some of the other types of design. There's a nice Lion and Healy piano. Looks like it could use some love. You could see the logo there on the plate. Just some really incredible furniture work here. Here's some more of this is going back to the hand carved instruments. And this is back, they told me in the day when there was a little bit more liberty that could be taken by the craftsman in terms of the carving and the subject and so on and so forth. Looks like we have a key signature up here, maybe B flat, something like that. And so I believe this that we're looking at right here was a completely other instrument, but with the same composers and similar design of the other one that I had shown you guys. Here's a different design. There's another version, right? Wagner, Beethoven, Mozart. Here's an instrument from 1926. Another look at some of the more modern instruments that were in the sort of performance room. more of the hand painted work. And this is what I was discussing. So you can see this instrument looks like it's kind of a signature design. That's a hand painted design, and probably one of the more original versions of this particular instrument. But then when we saw in the modern instrumental room, you could see that they were still implementing a similar design using decals and other updated techniques and materials. More hand painted work. There's a line of all of the instruments that had more of the hand painted work on them. There's another Salvi instrument. I love it. I made a comment like, you could tell it's Italian. It's got that similar feeling of a Vespa motor scooter or something like that. This one in particular, like I could just ride on my Vespa and carry that on my back or something. And we're approaching the end here. Nice little tribute to the American flag. All right, that's pretty much the extent of the photos they have, and it looks like we're almost out of time. So that's that all matches up pretty well with the timeline here. So I'll stop sharing screen and I'll just wrap up here briefly with a little bit of a preview of maybe what's to come. So I did get to network with some folks at Lyon and Healy, and we had some good conversations. And as I alluded to, it's much different to actually spend some time and meet someone and talk face to face. And so we've got a different relationship now than when I was just trying to make phone calls and leave messages and stuff like that. So likely I'll go back, I'll continue the conversation. I'm talking with them, about anything as simple as just having a representative join us for a little conversation, as we do sometimes on a Zoom call, all the way to, can we get in there and do some sort of almost like documentary footage of, take basically my slideshow to the next level. Very friendly people, very, very similar to the piano industry. You look at the workshop, you look at the type of people that kind of want to work on harps, and a similar distribution of sort of the age range. You've got plenty of like seasoned veterans who've been doing it for years, and then speckled in there, you got a few young people who are getting their hands dirty and doing something interesting. But I think there is a very strong case here. We can't force it, but I do think there's a really strong case to do some overlap between the two industries, because I think both industries are lacking in really great talent, and there's the ability for those folks that have a passion for music and musical instruments to get in there and do some good work and help people out, and make a little bit of money and extra money, and have a little bit more to offer the music industry. All right, folks. I think that brings things to a conclusion. If there's any last comments or questions, of course, we could jump in and say hi on those. But if not, I can walk us out and do the outro on the episode, and we'll probably see you all next week. So thank you very much for joining us today. I will I already put in the Zoom chat a little bit of an overview of the links that we're sharing. I'll do that into the social chat as well. So a reminder, of course, if you want to keep up with us, attend every live session easily, support the future growth of the fine production here we have going, you can go to bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. If you want to check out Chris Brown's masterclass on regulation, that's coming up pretty swiftly here on Thursday. I put the link in the chat to sign up for that. We had a couple of cool masterclasses recently with Doug Gregg and David Clavins. You can check those out. I put the links in there. Of course, as always, we appreciate your feedback. So the feedback link is there in the chat as well. Also, remember, you might want to subscribe to the podcast. It's free. It's fun. You can listen to it in your car, in the workshop, when you're doing the dishes, working out, whatever, going for a run. And that's pianotechradio.com or pianotechradio.com/subscribe. And then just finally a reminder to just generally go to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com to find out more about what's going on with us here. And so that concludes the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. And thanks to Lion and Healy and the friendly folks there for entertaining my desire to get more involved and allowing me to visit and tour around. And as always, we're brought to you here by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today, by signing up for this session individually, you could make your life more convenient by subscribing to PTRH at just $16 a month. You get recording of today's session in our member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. As mentioned, that's bit.ly/join PTRH. We'll see you all again next week. Thanks for being here.